Hello, folks. Thanks, Ruben, for the opportunity, and of course, thanks for FinOps Foundation for all the support, mentorship, etc., for us to get where we are. Definitely, FinOps Foundation has grown in the last 4 years I've been with it, so it's a journey that we love to be on, right? All right. So today, I'll be talking about rolling forecast, right? So primarily, our agenda topics are going to be what are we doing today, right? Today in our regular traditional forecasting, what the companies are doing today. What does rolling forecast mean, right? How can we combine that? Rolling forecast is used everywhere, not just cloud, right? How can you combine that with cloud spend? And then other thing is that what personas do we work with in getting the rolling forecast like done, approved, etc., communicated? And then what makes it work? And the last couple things are tools. So of course, it's not just, you don't have to buy tools to do it. Anything that you're doing forecast, but you can adapt to it to make it a rolling forecast. And then like everything else, it comes with challenges too, right? So let's move forward. So primarily thing that we are doing today, right? Today, when you do a forecast, any tool that you're using or how are you developing that forecast, you're taking the cost, you're trending the cost for a certain time, right? You take like 3 months or 6 months and you say, okay, give me the next 12 months of spend. That's a one-time thing that you do normally. A lot of companies, they do it like every 12 months, right? You put a forecast in and then you don't forget about it and then you look at it like a few months later when you're ready to do for next year. So the challenge with that is that it's in time, right? You're doing it one-time thing. You're not putting any inputs to it, right? Any changes, you're not adapting to any changes. It's great that you have a forecast, right? But it's got its limitations. And then other thing is that when you're moving, especially with the cloud, so in traditional on-prem environment, yes, you buy those servers, you buy big capacity, and you're done with it, right? You know it's going to, you can use the same thing for putting additional workloads, et cetera, right? But cloud spend is variable spend. So you have to adapt to that variability. You're going from CapEx to OpEx, right? And OpEx changes on a regular basis. So doing a one-time forecast is not something that you can scale or give the true accurate cost that we're expecting with actuals as time goes, right? So what do we do with that? Means how do we change that particular model to go to a different way to adapt your future costs in the cloud? So what you're looking primarily is called something called rolling forecast. It's rolling 12-month. So you're basically doing a forecast, then you're making sure that you manage your actuals, and then you do your variance analysis with your actuals. That's what primarily the rolling forecast is, right? At the same time, it gives you an option of adapting to your changes. Anything coming up like inorganic growth, for example, right? You basically you can input your drivers, your labor changes, your product changes, your market changes, right? All those things you can feed in that because you're doing a continuous forecast and matching it against your actuals. So that's what rolling forecast is. So first we'll talk about the concept of the rolling forecast, right? What the concept is. So traditionally, if you do like the first view, you take a forecast. Now, I've done it by quarter here, but our recommendation is that, our suggestion is that if you do a monthly instead of quarter, it's basically for the space is where I try to do it so you can have the concept in a single view. So you do your first forecast, but then you go and revisit your forecast end of the month. And then you supplement that with your actuals. You see what your variance is, right? Because the goal is that for your stakeholders to understand what my drivers are, how did my actual change with my forecast? If my forecast is $100, I'm getting $110 from my actuals, why is my $10 different coming up, right? That's the goal. And then you adjust accordingly, because that will give you capabilities of making decisions. How do you want to take that project, whether you want to invest from somewhere else into this, halt something else, right? You can do it sooner, bringing that agility into that particular decision. So the next one is that how do you do the rolling forecast, right? So there are 7 different things that you look at from forecasting, from actually looking into enabling the forecasting itself. So first thing is you're identifying your objects, right? Why do you need it? you're going through your contract processing, you're going through your EDP, or you're going with AWS or MACC with Azure, right? That's one of the purpose. The other thing that you're going to do is that inorganic growth. So for any new projects coming in, right, that definitely requires additional cost coming in. So you have to input that cost in your forecasting, right? And you don't have to wait for 12 months to do that. You can do it on a monthly basis, right? The other thing that you look at into is that the forecasting period. Like I mentioned, it's better to do it quicker, like do it on a monthly basis. Even quarterly is good, right? But understand what your business needs are, because it comes with complexity, right? Especially if you don't have automation in the system, it takes resources, it takes processes to work with on a monthly basis, so you can make it quarterly. So you have to understand, choose the right period. The other one is that verifying your data resources, right? So what sources, basically, where are you getting the data from? Like all your billing systems, all your ITAM systems, all your CMDBs, et cetera, right? All that have to be taken into account to give you a true forecast, your true cost of ownership. So your forecast has to be basically in your true cost of ownership, right? Not just one piece of data. So definitely your sources are important, right? Who are contributing that process? With all the different personas that you're going to work with, your procurement, your engineering, your finance, et cetera, right? Product owners, so you have to take them into considerations. Another thing is establishing scenarios, right? The scenarios I already mentioned to you, labors, inorganic growth, right? All those you take into place, and then tools and technologies where you do have to have all the sources like I mentioned. It doesn't have to have like a buy. You can use your own tools, what you're doing today, but do it more frequently, right? That's the goal for this particular exercise. And then the key thing is just by doing rolling forecast or implementing rolling forecast is not good enough, right? Because you have to read the output of that particular forecast. You have to understand your variances, which is the key, right? What is making your cost to go up or go down, positive, negative, either way, okay? Going through, the next one is, so again, we've done this, right? But it's a collaboration. The first thing of FinOps principles is you have to have collaboration. So you have to have all the stakeholders, the right stakeholders that you are going to work with, and you have to follow. So this is the suggested RACI that I have, which we implemented in our previous company I was working with at Cigna, is you have to understand the roles and responsibilities of the people who will help you drive this forward. It's a cultural shift, right? So to get ready of cultural shift, you have to work as a team with a collaboration instead of doing everything on your own, right? Because sign-off is a key for getting rolling forecast implemented, especially when you're going from legacy model into the rolling forecast model. So the personas that we worked with, right, are three main personas, or actually four I would say here. One is, of course, your engineering lead and managers who develop this thing on a daily basis. Your finance lead, now we had finance lead that was in the businesses itself, plus a centralized like CFO level finance person. So we had to collaborate with both. You have to, and then the third thing that we work with, of course, is the procurement team, but again, product owners, product owners and procurement teams, at least keep them informed, because all you're doing is if you're doing your contracts, right, you have to make sure that as you change your forecast up or down, you are managing your commitments, okay? So if you look at the last stuff here is that you have to make sure that all the teams keep informed on this, and then the frequency of communication that you need to have with these people, right? So especially with your daily stand-ups, again, it's too much work, but it helps you because you know where people are spending that, what new things are coming down the pipe, right? It keeps you updated with that. And the other ones that are listed here, you do bi-weekly, you do monthly, right? And of course, depending on if you're doing monthly and quarterly, your rolling forecast, then you have your proper cadences. Communication is the key with all the stakeholders, and understanding what is coming down the pipeline also helps with the rolling forecast. So, next one, okay. So success drivers. So how do we take this forward, right? What worked for us? So the first thing is communication, leadership buy-in. You're changing from a traditional process to a new process, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It took us like 2 years to get to that where we are from regular forecast to monthly forecast. And what enabled us, it's not something that we thought on our own to do this. It's basically when we are providing the data to the teams, they came back to us, our stakeholders came back to us saying that, I need to know the variance, what happened from last month to this month. How can I provide that? Or they came back and saying that, I have this forecast, right? But now I'm getting this actuals. I don't know what can I do with it, right? So their feedback, their input drove us to implement this particular solution for them, okay? So definitely their communication, your buy-in is required, you're tracking actual performance, as this what I was just mentioning about actual performance tracking. And the biggest thing is automation. You can't be sitting out there and churning the data month on month and doing my actuals and doing my forecasting and then doing all this manually. So we had to build automation in place where we could extract and do the actual data and then also put the forecast data and lay it together. So how do we do this with tooling? So what we did is primarily is we used Apptio products, a suite of Apptio products to help to do this. But at the same time, it's also an evolving process with the tools also. You cannot get it perfect. You cannot get it in one tool. You need like multiple tools to start with till you learn the process itself, and then you try to consolidate and see how we can do to make it better. So you're talking about version 1, right? So I'm going to go with little actual snippets here. It is based on that particular tool, like basically APIs, but snippets of those APIs, but it can be done on your own. It's basically the concepts or the steps is what we'll be focusing on, okay? So the first thing that we are doing it is the way Apptio product, one of the cloudability products for Apptio, helps to create views. Views basically is persona-defined output, right? So you're taking like if a finance person or procurement person or like a business 1 to business 2, right? They only care about their data, right? You don't want to get all companies' data to a single person or single business entity, right? So that's what the views is. Basically, it filters the data for that particular persona or the business. The second step that we did is that based on that particular view, you basically, when you said share in this particular step is who all needs to see, all your stakeholders, right? Who all need to see that particular data. So you share that particular data with different stakeholders to look at the output of the data. And the third thing that you do is once you identify, so that's the identification step, right? Who are your key contributors are, who are your stakeholders are. The third thing you're doing is that you're generating the actual data itself, right? Your actuals. So that's the piece that you're generating an actual. You can generate the actuals by whatever dimensions you want to talk about, right? You saw in focus yesterday, there's certain dimensions they're working towards. Is whatever dimensions that you care about. Here it's account names, vendor, right? And then you've got your different types of costs. You've got your cost, total cost, amortized cost. Amortized cost basically takes into account all your pre-purchase capacity, right? It gives you your monthly view of anything that you paid your RIs and SPs for. So that's your actual output. So you need that actual output for the rolling forecast because at the month close, you have to take that actual and then you generate the new forecast for that particular month or the following months. And then you create a forecast. So you've got your actuals, at the month end, you got your actuals, and then for the following month, you got a forecast. These steps, then you repeat, right? Every month, you repeat these particular steps. You've got automation in place, you repeat these steps, you'll get this output pretty quick, right? And that's your forecast. So you're doing this iterative exercise on a monthly basis. You're still doing a 12-month rolling forecast. You're still doing that output that you did initially with your like a yearly forecast that you did, but you're repeating that same process again and again. What does that give you? That gives you an output of all your costs. You've got actuals first, and then a forecast. The next month, you get actuals, and then you forecast for rolling 12 months. That's how you get your outputs. But again, like I said, it's an evolving process, right? It's version 1. So what did we learn from this process? We learned so first thing that we did is we basically ingested the reports from Cloudability, one of the tools in Apptio, And we used their second tool called cost transfer to generate our dashboards where we can do our analysis, look at both at the same side, that you're seeing the board on the left side. We had to use a different tool called cost transparency to model that information in it. Then we basically used another dashboard from another tool from Apptio called Bill of IT to generate those dashboards and give access to all the stakeholders for the dashboards. And then what we did is, of course, we refresh that every 12 months, like I said. So we run our schedulers every 12 months, every month to generate the data, the forecast and the actuals. And for executives, we had to have another dashboard, right, which they're comfortable with, to present the data to them so they can drill the data down. And then lastly, there was still a manual step in this process, right? That you've got your actuals, you've got your variance. Somebody has to go in there, look at the actuals versus variance. What are my drivers? What's causing my S3 bucket? All of a sudden, my storage went up, right? Or my RIs and savings plans expired, right? What are my variances, positives and negatives, right? And then the last thing, like I mentioned earlier, was you still need, for your variances, you need to ensure that if you're committing to your EDP or MACC, there's a commitment 3 years, 5 years. You make sure that you track that commitment. So as your data changes, you will see whether, if I'm doing, like, just an example, $1,200, and I'm doing $100 per month. If I'm less than $100, I have a risk for that commitment, right? So you have to track the whole thing in there. So what do we see here? We see here we've got 4 sets of tools. Even though it's the same vendor, but still like 4 sets of tools, right? And then you're doing a manual step here. So definitely we need to evolve, we need to make it better. So thankfully for that, what happened is we have, so version 2, right, is Apptio came up with their new tool within the capabilities within the Cloudability itself, which gives you all those 4 things together. So the first thing you're basically looking at, you're driving a plan, right? You basically put all your input, the 7 things that we talked about, you put all your drivers in here in one place. How do you want to group that particular data, right? What frequency that you want that forecast for. And then it generates the output for you. So you just consolidated 2 tools into one right there. And the third thing is that what we talked about is it tells you your actuals versus your variance. And it does your variance analysis already for you. It tells you where your key areas are, where what changes were, right? It draws that map for you from before and after. So you're eliminating your manual process of doing the variance analysis. And the last thing is that it gives you a breakdown, right? Breakdown of all your services, it breaks down all your businesses. However you group your data with your business entities, your application products, give that to you, right? So, and then of course, the other key thing that's enhancement is, you're adding your variables to it, right? We talked about variables, like adapting to your changes, your labor changes, you're adapting to your inorganic growth, a new application coming in, right? All that stuff is inbuilt into this. And this is what we get from this, right? The plus is you're combining your 4 tools to 1 tool, right? You're doing automated variance analysis, and you've got your however you want to see that particular data is available to you. How does it help you? The biggest advantage that you get with this is that when you provide this to your executives, to your finance teams, right? You provide and equip them with this data. They can make decisions whether they want whatever, if one product or application is costing more, they can shift the funding from one place to another place. They can delay a market producing whatever it is. If the product is not doing well, they can delay the deployment of that particular product, maybe 2 PIs, 3 PIs, right? This will help them. They don't have to wait for 12 months, or they don't have to wait for 2 quarters to get this done. That's the key of the rolling forecast, the advantage of rolling forecast. But again, like I said, it comes with challenges, right? It's exhaustive process, right? Time-consuming, you need resources. Definitely, we talked about cultural change. It requires retooling, right? Retooling, training, et cetera, for the finance teams. And since it's continuously changing, I can't go back if you're doing a monthly rolling forecast, you can't go back 3 months what your forecast was because it's changed. So of course, that's something that you need to adapt to. And then the last thing is that when I just talked about reallocating funds, right, it's a continuous process versus doing it once and forget about it. So those are challenges. The team needs to adapt to it. You need to have automation in place to get this done, to make it work successfully. And again, it's a journey. It cannot be done overnight. It will take its own time, right? And then the credits here. So I think I've got it right in time for my questions, right? I've got 5 minutes here. So if you've got any questions, let me know. Sorry, okay, sure, I'll do that.
I saw a lot of camera phones popping up.
So a couple different questions for you,
Sure.
right? So are you pulling in data from Oracle or SAP into Apptio?
No, we are pulling it from like all the cloud providers.
Okay. And then
That's one, but then
Right.
we also have data coming from like labor, like from our CMDB information or other tools that that use labor
right.
into the system also.
Okay. All right. And then if you're using the ITP module, Is that what
For Apptio.
uh-huh.
So so again, I'm talking about not Mastercard because Mastercard is not doing rolling forecast. I'm talking about Cigna. So we're using so the products that we used there because the financial planning is relatively new. It's still in beta for Apptio, so they don't have that yet. But we used Cloudability to get all the cloud data. We are using cost transparency to build all the models where we input all the different data, all the different sources, and the bill of IT is a dashboard that the output that you see right now.
All right, so the last company, we used the ITP module, and that we had that rolling forecast. And the problem we had was the ITP module was, it was live data. Cost transparency uses static data to build the dashboards. So what did you do when executives needed that immediate report on what's going on right now? Because it could take Apptio 24 to 48 hours to transfer stuff from ITP into cost transparency for those dashboards.
So we are doing so the process in the back end pulls the data. The way we had it, we had data pulling in like every 4 hours from those tools into Apptio. There's ingestion. So you have to run the scheduler and then on Apptio side and on the back side and pull the data based on whatever frequency that you want with it. Yeah.
Hey, Vik,
Yes.
do you have any tips for in collaboration with the business and implementing the business forecast and how you translate that into usage?
So if I understand your question correctly, right, is you're looking for as far as for a product A, right, and correct me if I'm wrong here, product A, this is the services, this is the cost, this is what I'm utilizing from like capacity-wise, et cetera? Okay, so when I talked about business, right, when you use Tableau at that time, you are able to drill down multiple layers. So you look at product, you look at applications in that product, you look at services using that product, and you look at the cost in the product. And depending on what layers do you want to drill down to, right, you can do that in the tool, if that's what your question is. Thanks.
Great presentation, Vik, here.
Thanks.
What was the process that you followed, like when there was a variance, let's say like you have a forecasted and there are actuals. So what generally was the percentage between the forecasted and the actuals? And if a team is like over the forecasted, how did you used to come up with solutions in that case?
So the variance will depend on what levers you do. If you have a static application or a product, right, it doesn't change much. Your variance is very low, right? And it changes it's different from application to application. The drivers that cause the variance, like for example, anomalies, right? You'll definitely skew the results if you get an anomaly. Somebody pulled up an RDS instance, you will see the anomaly. So you have to understand what those variances are. You need to understand what your services cost, your like historical services costs are like, and how am I doing for the last 3 months? And all of a sudden I see a variance there, you know what that is, so you can flag it, right? So in the other scenarios that we saw is from like SaaS perspective is because you got SaaS data in there too. We can see that if, for example, somebody's like using storage, is using high capacity of storage, Then they realize, oh, I can't sustain that cost growth on my side. I need to charge these allocations back, right? So that's how you understand, and you have to, but that there you need expertise from the actual product owners and applications to understand what levers you need to pull to get that data back to the track how you had expected it to happen. Unless it's going to be a permanent variance, and then your forecast will be adjusted accordingly, and you have to basically adapt to it.
Hi, Vik.
Yes.
Sorry. Question for you. Do you have any tips about how to shift finance culturally from the traditional model to accept the new rolling forecast model?
Yes. So again, it'll vary for the company, right? So when I talked about buy-in, so first thing you do is you basically present the data. You observe yourself for 2 or 3 months. You can't just publish it out to them that this is what it is, right? So we did like a couple quarters of understanding how the data looks like, right? And then within our central IT finance team, we worked with them first. We got their buy-in first, right? And then they were our like sources to take it to the finance team across the businesses and talk to them about it, right? We did not go directly to the business finance team and saying that, no, you do it, we are doing this here. We need support with us, right? People who can agree with us to walk with us and get that support from the external entity, right?
Hey, thanks for your presentation. Hi, here.
Got it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Lights is there, so sorry.
Okay. So for Cloudability itself has a forecasting based on the historical data, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you're pulling in and connecting with Aptio cost transparency?
That's what we were doing. We did that, yes.
You did that,
right.
yeah.
But now they have got the financial planner
Yes.
to look at. So that gives, you don't have to do all like 4 different tools anymore.
But the question I had there is,
Sure.
but your CMDB data and your company-specific data that you integrated in Aptio to get your actual forecast and the actual numbers versus forecast.
Correct.
With the new tool that CMDB, because we had problems integrating the CMDB data to the Cloudability directly. So how did you overcome that with a new model?
So, and I'm going to tell this with a caveat, right, is that, so you do have, with the new model, you do have capabilities of inputting those very different additional pieces into it, like labor, et cetera, right? You can do that. As far as it's in beta, so we had talked to them about, like, do you have API functionality to pull the data in? They're going to add that to it. So that's the caveat I'm telling you, that I don't know when it will be ready from their side, but my understanding is that they're looking into adding that functionality into it. So,
One final question here.
sure.
So to that one, Cloudability was able to help us integrating with CMDB with directly using the business mapping. We were able to achieve that. And my question is about Cloudability. When it gives the forecast, daily summary for monthly, it includes, there is no option to configure global preferences or anything for avoiding the one-time purchases, marketplace orders. Every time we get that, it is queued up email saying, oh, yours is 30% down or 50% down. How did you address
So
that?
no, it does have Cloudability forecast, does have an option of excluding one-time charges and one-time credits. So it'll exclude, like, if you buy reserve instant savings plans, right?
Okay.
You'll be able to exclude one-time charges. You see marketplace, those one-time charges can be excluded from Cloudability. And then you can choose whether you want to put the credits in or credits out. Right? That's
okay.
another option. So it does give you both the options. What the current forecast tool in Cloudability doesn't give you can only do it by services, right? So the version 2 gives you can group by services, business entity, services, account name, everything.
Okay. So you're referring everything in Cloudability only we are using. So within that one, you are saying that options are
Correct.
available.
That's correct. Yep.
I'll reach.
Thank you so much, Vik, for this elaborative presentation. Can I get a huge yell? Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks for watching that session. I'm sitting here in San Diego right after FinOps X. We hope you join us next year here live 2024. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and join the community. Get involved, join the summits, get in a working group, and don't forget to get FinOps certified. Because next year here in San Diego for FinOps X, it's going to be twice as big. Come join the party. Come meet your people. Welcome home.